That's better. Okay. So let's get started. Even before I jump into the session today, I want to get a pulse of my audience here. So can everyone just raise their hand, whoever made their critical decisions based on active or passive data? Okay, we have quite a few. Just one. No microbiologists, really, you don't look at any data. Lab data, LIMS data, management data. There you go, I have more hands coming up. That's good, that's better. Okay, and how about, are there any Six Sigma green belts, black belts in my audience today? Any process improvement managers? That's good. So at least I know exactly how to tailor my presentation, what to talk about and what to stay away from. I'm not going to use you or bore you with all the technical Six Sigma stuff, the vocabulary that we as process engineers use. I'm going to stay at the more microbiologist vocabulary. So let's jump into the session here. That's my bio right over there. I'm a certified Lean Six Sigma black belt. Basically, my job is to improve laboratory operations from an effectiveness as well as efficiency point of view. My areas of expertise are basically I deal with Lean projects and Six Sigma projects, Kaizens, advanced statistical techniques, which includes SPC, MSA, and design of experiments. I'm also a chartered chemist for the province of Ontario in Canada. The agenda for today, the way I have laid out again, is introduction to workflow optimization. We'll start with what exactly workflow optimization is, what is performance solution, how you can improve your labs, what methodology we use when I go in and I help you as microbiologists, as managers and supervisors of lab to improve your operations. And then I'm going to share with you a recent case study that we did in the USA. In the end, we'll wrap up with any question and answers, but I think the man, like a week in this lab, we looked at their operations, we observed their staff working at the workstation level, and then at the end of the week, we were able to provide them some solutions. Listening to our solutions, this lab went ahead, implemented our solutions, we went back, we followed up in the next 2 months, and then I have some extremely, breakthrough results that this lab achieved that I'm going to share at the end of this presentation. As far as the scope of the assessment was concerned, the focus was on sample flow. From the time the samples are received to the time the samples are sent out. We also built a roadmap for significant transformational improvement according to their specifications. The objectives of this assessment was to increase efficiency and effectiveness in the lab, at the same time provide quality results. Here's in a snapshot how their receiving pattern looked like. So that's in regards to their QI and pathogen tests. That was their volume, based on percentage. And then we also did just for their QI, that's the microbiology test. So that way, and all this data was pulled from their LIMS. So it was like a year's worth of data that we analyzed before providing them the results. We also mapped out the laboratory, and what we did is we created observational points in different locations of the lab. We started here, and then we went ahead. As you see these arrows, you see the Googles or the specs. That's where we took a lot of snapshots. This was like random data that was collected throughout the day when we were doing our observations. So these are all the snapshots at various locations that we did our observations. And while we were doing the observations, we were actually looking for how much of technical activity is happening at that point of time, at that place. How much of administration is happening. Administration is any logging in, any keyboards, entering of samples, all those things were looked at. What about movement? How much movement is involved? How much are the staff moving? When they receive the samples, how far are the workstations? We looked at all that excess motion that was happening in their lab. From a walking perspective, how much walking are the technicians doing? Sometimes it may not be a lab space issue. You may have a very big lab, and your staff will really, just doing that walk will get healthy, but your samples get weak. So we need to have that balance between your how much your staff are walking and how much volume you're receiving. What about other tasks? How much of chit chat is going on? How much of the time that your staff is spending on telephone calls? How much of your time is being spent on resolution? All these things were looked at, and the results were outstanding. Now, this may be very common in the microbiology industry, and this is the percentage of lean waste that I'm sharing with you right over here. That 31% is the average what we see in microbiology labs. And sometimes it really increases to 50%. So some of the labs that we did assessment, the walking and movement accounted for about 50% of the activities that happen in the lab. So once that is identified, then we provide you with solutions on how you can minimize this walking, how you can minimize this movement. What about the other activities that are happening? The ideal should be the technical activities should be happening the most. And that's where we should target. That's where we come in and help you out. We figure out what's the major issues of, if it's admin, then there's so much manual work happening. Your people are spending time logging in temperatures, logging in samples. There's a lot of manual work, and the best solution is bring in some LIMS software, install that, get it up to speed, train your people, and then you focus on your technical bar. The next thing will be to effectively ensure that your staff are doing technical work and avoiding all these activities. We also did a capacity and workload assessment. All the green that you see the spike right here. This is when the lab received a huge bundle of volumes of sample. That's when their couriers arrived. That's when they received about 90% of their samples. And then there was no samples being received. Only sample preparation was happening throughout the day. So once these gaps are identified, then we work with your operations, with your manager, with your supervisor, with your team leads in the lab staff, and we figure out how we can ensure that we use these gaps effectively, So basically the staff was just idle during this time. They had nothing to do. Early in the morning they were very busy because they received this big volume, and then in the afternoon they had nothing to do. So there wasn't any balance between how you were receiving the samples and how you were testing the samples. This is a spaghetti tool that we often use in the lean analysis. Now, this is a very visual tool, and that's one of the reasons why I'm sharing with you. This identifies how much of movement is happening in your lab. Once this is identified, and this is the current lab flow. The blue is the common flow. That's when you receive the samples and the samples are distributed. The orange over here is all the walking that's happening for Salmonella. And if you see right here, this is one end of the lab, and it goes all the way. The incubator is right at the other end of the lab. That's how much walking the staff was doing for every sample, just because the incubator was located right at the end of the lab. And then we have some more walking happening over here with the yellow. When they were testing Listeria, the other incubator was far enough as well. And this is what we propose. For Listeria, we moved the incubators, we moved some benches here and there, and that's all. That's how much of activity, how much of movement the lab now requires. And that's for Salmonella. So I'm going to go back to my previous slide. See how much movement happening here before we did our assessment. This is just pure lean waste. Any overproduction, any overprocessing, any excess motion, any downtime, any errors, all this is lean waste. And that's what we do. We come in your lab, we look at your activities, and we significantly reduce this waste. And this is what the ideal situation is. All the lean waste reduced, the distance moved, the instruments are now located in the right place, that your staff can reach it at the right time. In conclusion, we improved the turnaround time, We reduced the non-value-added steps in the lab. We were able to provide less movement. We also reduced the batch size, so the lab staff were more productive, and this all resulted in improved quality, improved service to the end customer. When we did the follow-up, these are the results from the follow-up after our assessment. So we went back after 2 months, and we noticed the lab efficiency was increased by 22% in the lab. Once we collected the fresh data, we analyzed about 80% of reduced motion and transportation. And that is huge, especially. About 50% is what we see. This lab really, that they were walking huge distances, so we were able to get 80%. Freed up staff time to perform work of higher customer value, and also it increased employee satisfaction and employee morale. What does this mean to your director, to the VP, to the upper management? This is what upper management gets: decreased lab operating time with existing resources. You don't need to hire any additional staff. You don't need to spend any additional money. I mean, this is the time when everyone wants to save, and that's when we come in and help you out. Some of the performance solutions services that bioMérieux currently offers is we provide a roadmap for freeing capacity to address increased testing volume. We work on reducing time to result, which is very critical metric when it comes to your end customer. We also increase quality of results, and all this really helps you in making smart use of all your existing lab resources, which dramatically raises satisfaction, increases your customer market value levels among all the existing customers. Now here are some of the labs in the North American market as well as South America that we recently did some assessments, and the customers were able to achieve some good results. We also did, just last month I was in Brazil, Sao Paulo. We did one lab over there. Last year we were in Chile. We did another assessment, and we are still working with them for the improvement. So that's another, in Chile as well, we have accomplished some good results. So now I end my presentation. I think we do still have some time if you have any questions. Any questions? Anyone has any doubts, questions, comments beforehand? Perfect. Okay. Yeah. Thanks again.